Next on Max TV, we preview Calderon Cáceres, the rematch, and we have news and notes coming up on the next round. And welcome to another edition of the Next Round. Steve Kim joined as always by the editor-in-chief of Max Boxing, Doug Fisher. Another jam-packed show. We begin round number one, where it's a rematch from Bayamon, Puerto Rico, from the Ruben Rodriguez Coliseum for the WBO Junior Flyweight title of the world. Ivan Calderon, the Iron Boy, at 31-0. He takes on Hugo Cáceres with the record of 26-4-1. Their first matchup last August 25th, 2007. Calderon wins a split decision over Cáceres coming off the canvas in the 8th round. Doug, I think this fight has a lot of interesting variables. In the first fight, I thought outside some rough moments late, Calderon pretty much controlled the action, and Cáceres really didn't do any type of job, good or bad, in cutting off the ring. But I also believe that Calderon is a year older. There is some wear and tear on the tires, and it looks like he is slowing down. I would favor Calderon to win this fight, but I think whatever gap there was last year, because of the natural age and size, I think that gap is closed.
Yeah, it's definitely closed a little bit. You know, Calderon is 33 years old, which is pretty old for sub-flyweight, those weight divisions, Steve. And because of his lack of power, I mean, he only has 6 knockouts, I believe, in 31 prize fights. He has to go a lot of rounds. And in fact, he's gone the 12-round championship distance 13 times. And most of his fights have gone 10 or 12 rounds. So there's a lot of mileage. There's a lot of wear and tear on those legs. When you combine that with his age, and you look at his recent performances, and I'm particularly thinking of a performance against a guy named Juan Esquer from Mexico, who he fought last December. Juan Esquer is not that special, but that was a competitive fight. I'm not going to say it was a close fight, but it was a competitive fight just because of the youth and activity of the Mexican fighter. What I'm saying is that he doesn't move his hands as much as he did. He can't move his legs as consistently as he once did, and he's lost a little bit off his fastball, a little bit on his reflexes, and maybe he has slowed down enough to where Cáceres, who is the naturally bigger man, stronger man, and harder hitter, might get more than one shot in to drop him. He might have more moments like he had in the 8th round of the first fight in this rematch.
Doug, it's going to be interesting to see just what type of adjustments, if any, if Cáceres makes. Is he going to move to his left a little bit more? Is he going to hit to the body a little bit more?
He needs to make a lot of adjustments,
Is he going to close the gap? I thought last year he fought a very aimless fight.
He followed him around. He wasn't cutting off the ring. He was following Cáceres.
He believed the first hard shot I land will end the fight. Now, he almost proved to be prophetic in the 8th round. He had Calderon hurt more than any time I've seen in his career.
And holding on.
But guys who are elusive, who know how to box, have a great survival instinct. And the bottom line is very simple. He wasn't going to win a fight in Puerto Rico last year, and I find it very difficult to believe in a close fight that he will win a decision in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. I think it's another close fight. I also think Ivan Calderon is going to have some dangerous moments, but I have a feeling he's going to find a way to sneak out a close, maybe controversial split decision.
I agree, Steve. I think it's a close decision, perhaps majority, perhaps split, and I would not be surprised if in the eyes of most objective observers that it's a little bit controversial. The first fight was not really controversial. No. It was a split decision, but I thought the two judges who had 115, 112 scorecards for Calderon were right on the money. I thought he won 8 rounds. He loses a point for the knockdown in the 8th round. 115, 112 was fair. The third judge who scored it for Cáceres, 116, 111 was completely insane. He was not watching the real fight. He was basically giving Cáceres credit for coming forward, but Cáceres had very ineffective aggression. And you talk about stepping to the left and actually cutting off the ring as opposed to following Calderon around the ring. I I think he needs to let his hands go
Yeah.
more. He was throwing one power punch at a time, and he was missing by a very wide margin, Steve. He needs to take a page from Antonio Margarito's book, and they are friends and they are stablemates. I think he needs to punch in bunches. He needs to let his hands go, and he needs to walk in with a jab. Even if that jab doesn't find the mark most of the times, it will help him close the distance and land punches on the inside.
Well, Doug, I think tempo is very important, just like you said. I think one of the key things that is missing when fighters face someone who's very elusive, and I've seen this a million times, they all fall into the trap. They go for the head, not realizing everything below the neck, even if it is blocked, parried, or deflected, it'll still keep you in balance, and it centers a guy right in front of you, and it allows you to close the distance. I think one thing that Cáceres should do is go to the body as many times as possible. Calderon is going to be Calderon, except I think the key difference is there was a time, just 2-3 years ago, Calderon could skate around the ring for 36 minutes at a time. I think that time is now down to about 27 minutes. There are going to be opportunities for Hugo Cáceres to close the gap and land leather. But here's the thing, Doug. Last year he landed one big shot. He never landed the 2 or the 3.
No, he didn't. And that was the problem. And I agree with you. The jab will help straighten out his other punches. One of the problems with Cáceres is there was no jab to set up the powerful right hand and the left hook, and that right hand was logged. Yeah. It was looped, and the left hook, it was telegraphed. And if you're telegraphing your punches against a moderate fighter, he's going to get out of the way. A guy like Calderon, he's going to laugh at you. But I do believe that Cáceres will have moments in this fight, more than one moment in this rematch, and I think it's going to come over the second half of the fight.
So there it is, the rematch from Boyamón, Puerto Rico. It is Ivan Calderon taking on Hugo Cáceres. And we come back, we take a look at news and notes. Moving on with round 2 of the next round, Steve Kim, Doug Fisher talking boxing. We move on to news and notes, the fight review on Telefutura. Daniel Jimenez with a workmanlike 10-round decision over Shamir Reyes. And on the deuce, Fernando Beltran with a 12-round decision over Takalani and Lovu. And then Harry Yorgi with a clear-cut 12-round decision over Jason Lahoulier. Doug, I don't know about you, but I actually thought Lovu did more than enough to beat Fernando Beltran.
I thought it was a close fight. You know, Beltran is one of these guys, he's busy in there, but the quality of his punches, I'm not sure if they were equal to the South Africans. And I agree with you. I thought that was a very tight 12-round contest. I would still consider both guys, Steve, to be lower top 10, you know, like number 8, number 9, 122-pound contenders based on the performance they put on.
Yeah, this was actually, I believe, for an IBO featherweight belt. And I was thinking to myself, watching Lovu really counterpunch and throw some good hard straight shots up the middle.
Yeah.
Should Yuri Gamboa get past Marcos Ramirez October 4th, which I expect him to do so, I actually think from a style perspective, even though he lost, I think it's a much better fight than Fernando Beltran. Doug, Harry Yorgi, I thought just outclassed Lahoulier.
Yes.
That being said, I think Yorgi is a tough, solid guy. I don't ever see him being the world class.
I see a future Julio Cesar Chavez opponent, Steve.
Yeah.
Although that would be a pretty competitive fight.
He's a lot
Yorgi's
better than Matt Banda, though.
That's what I'm thinking. Exactly.
When you take a look at Daniel Jimenez, Doug, I don't know about you. I thought a year ago this guy was streaking. I thought he pulled some big upsets. He looked like a formidable guy at 130. I was stunned last year when on that card where Cáceres and Calderon fought, he lost to Rocky Martinez as a pretty sizable favorite.
Yep.
Doug, Jimenez to me looks like a guy who looks a little bit diminished coming off that Martinez fight.
Well, the Martinez fight was the fight of the night 1 year ago in Puerto Rico, Steve. And most of us, and I know I did, I heavily favored Jimenez to win that fight. I thought he was the better athlete. I thought he had better technique. I thought he had better legs. I thought he was the busier fighter. I just thought he had the edge in every department except perhaps the heart.
Yeah.
Martinez won that fight, and it was a very close fight. I think it was even on the scorecards. I think one judge had Martinez up by 1 point, one judge had Jimenez up by 1 point, the other judge had it even, and really whoever pulled it out in the 12th round was going to win that fight, and it was a terrific nip and tuck back and forth battle, folks. But it was Martinez who just kept pressing the issue and landing the power punches, and he stopped Jimenez in the 12th round of a grueling fight. And I wonder, I don't think physically it took anything from Jimenez, but I think psychologically maybe it took something from Jimenez's confidence. Having said that, You know, last week when we previewed this fight on Telefutura, we thought Jimenez's opponent was going to be Fernando Trejo, a rugged Mexican fighter who's a come-forward brawler type. Instead, he got Shamir Reyes, who's a New York-based Puerto Rican, who is the epitome of the slick, crafty southpaw, a guy who's constantly backpedaling, circling the ring, just throwing one shot at a time, usually a jab. I tell you what, Reyes is very hard to look good against. I'm going to give Jimenez a pass. I want to see him in the ring again, preferably at 130 pounds. And if in against an offensive-minded opponent, maybe he will recapture some of that momentum he had coming off that upset win over Vicente Escobedo.
Moving on, taking a look at the fight preview. Friday Night Fights, Matt Godfrey takes on Emmanuel Nwodo in a battle of cruiserweights. Telefutura, Mike Jones at 14-0 takes on Juliano Ramos. Then in Cincinnati, Saturday night is the return of Layman Brewster and the homecoming of the favored son of the Queen City, Rashad Holloway. Godfrey Nwodo, I think, is a pretty good cruiserweight battle. Nwodo was the victim of perhaps the knockout of the year from the Dingling Man last year. He's a sturdy, big, rugged guy who has pretty heavy hands, and Godfrey usually makes for pretty damn good TV.
Yeah, well, they're both very good boxers. I see Godfrey as sort of an aggressive boxer, Steve, a good technician. He has I would say, underrated power. Nwodo has a difficult style because this guy can stick and move Ali-esque around the ring. And if you remember, against the Dingling Man, he was winning that fight until he ran out of gas and was caught by the terrific power of Darnell Wilson. I don't think Godfrey has the kind of power that Dingling Man has. So I'm seeing a distance fight, and it's a tough fight to pick a winner. And let's not forget, Godfrey's coming off a loss. The first loss, this is a tough assignment to take after your first loss in your young pro career. But I'm looking forward to the fight. I don't think it's going to be, you know, an all-out battle, a war, Steve, but I think it's going to be an interesting 12-round boxing match.
Doug, it's not often you see an African-American fighter be the A-side on Telefutura. I think his name should be Miguel Gonzalez. 14-0. I think the key is very simple. I think if he has a chin, which has been questioned from people that saw him in the amateurs, this guy has all the tools to be a world-class welterweight.
It's a good fight because the Brazilian only has one loss, that to sort of a spoiler-type fighter in Jonathan Tubbs. And he used to be known, I know when he first turned pro 5 years ago, he was known for his power. So that's going to be interesting. Two strong welterweights in there. And Mike Jones, he's not a one-punch KO artist. No. And if you look at his record, I think he's 14-0 with 12 or 13 knockouts. You would think he's a KO artist. No, he actually wears guys down. He's a pretty good boxer in there. He's a busy technician. He wears guys down, and it's really his strength and his size, Steve, and the fact that he goes to the body and he throws combinations when he gets in close. But he's somebody I see. He's just 25 years old. I think when he's 27, 28 years old, I expect to see him in the junior middleweight division. And what I'm really looking forward to in this fight is if it goes past 8 rounds, how is Mike going to acquit himself? Because he's never been past 8 rounds.
Yeah, he actually struggled with Jermaine Sanders on a night where he did not have his best stuff, yet still found a way to win. Doug, Layman Brewster, it's been a long time since we've seen him. You keep in contact with him. Where is he at mentally?
Well, mentally, he's doing great. I think the break that he took away from boxing was good for him. I think he's in a good place. And when I last spoke to him in person, he was sparring with James Toney, and I really think he got James Toney into the form that James Toney displayed in the second and third rounds with his rematch with Hasim Rahman. And what I liked about the sparring sessions between Toney and Brewster, and these guys are very familiar with each other going back to when Layman Brewster was an amateur 201-pounder. He was boxing in there, Steve. He wasn't just plodding in front of his opponent, and I think James is good in that manner. He forces big, strong heavyweights to rely on more than their physical strength and their power. And I like the hand speed that I saw from Layman, and I like the jab that I saw from Layman. And having said that, Danny Batchelder, his opponent this Saturday in Cincinnati, is a difficult type guy. No, he's not a heavyweight contender. He's not even, maybe even a fringe contender, but he's difficult to look good against. He's a spoiler type, and he's a tough assignment for a guy who's coming off a devastating stoppage loss, as Brewster is, eye surgery, as Brewster is, and the inactivity that Lehman's coming off of.
It was just last year, Danny Batchelder may have eked out a split decision win over James Toney in the eyes of many in San Jose.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Taking a look at some weekend title fights. Friday night in Canada for the IBF Junior Featherweight title, Steve Molitor takes on Seferino Labarda. Then Saturday, Monterrey, Mexico for the WBC and WBA Junior Bantamweight title. Unified belt holder Christian Mijares takes on Chachai Sasakul. Doug, what I like about these two guys is they're below the radar in terms of HBO and Showtime, but you know what? They are staying active every 3-4 months.
Yeah, because they have good local promoters. Mijares in Mexico and Molitor in Canada. And in their regions, in their neck of the woods, they put butts in the seats. And they generally, even though both guys are boxers by nature, they're busy little technicians. They don't knock a lot of guys out. If they do, it's from attrition, late stoppages. But they're entertaining. They're not boring boxers. They're fun to watch. But I think it's really time for these guys to be featured on Showtime, whether it's Showbox or Championship Boxing or on HBO's Boxing After Dark. It's time for them to face marquee opponents at 115 pounds and 122 pounds because, you know what, on a good day, these guys could probably beat anybody in their division.
Doug, let's just belabor the point because that's what we do. 10, 12 years ago, when Lou DiBella was running that ship, guys like Steve Molitor and Christian Mijares would already be on their third and fourth
for Boxing After Dark
performance.
You're right.
Listen, they have completely bastardized that series. I'm not even so sure it exists in its real form, but I think Christian Mijares is one of the top 5 to 10 craftsmen in the world. He's in my pound for pound, and what makes it really something that's kind of a miscarriage of justice for both of these men is you can't say they're in divisions where there's no activity. There are plenty of guys within that division that have other belts and other solid contenders where you can mix and match and make good fights. Wrapping it up here with a pair of tidbits. October 4th, Boxing After Dark, Sergio Martinez takes on Alex Bunima, and then Andre Ward gets surgery on his right knee. He is out for the rest of 08. Doug, Boxing After Dark, I just ripped it, but
this is not a bad matchup. This is not bad.
Here's the thing, though. The October 4th show has Yuri Gamboa against Marcos Ramirez, Alfred Angulo against Andre Serkon.
2 young, undefeated up-and-comers.
And now Bunima against Martinez. Now,
these guys are old.
Right. I would have preferred DeAndre Lattimore against Martinez, but from what I understand, one of the reasons why Bunima was chosen was, I think the Martinez camp would rather face him.
Yes.
And he is rated higher in the WBC. I believe this is a WBC interim 154-pound title. You know what? If Bunima wins this fight, and I think he can.
Comeback of the year.
He is the comeback fight of the year it's not even close.
Yeah, he might have the upset of the year by knocking out Roman Karmazin. And that was a fight going into it. We have friends who gamble.
No shit.
I don't gamble.
No shit.
I say, put your money on Roman Karmazin. He is made in hell. Not only will he win, I guarantee you he will win by knockout. Well, I'm not that bright because Bunima, you know what? He proved everybody wrong. He didn't just beat Karmazin. He knocked the Russian out, and this is a tremendous opportunity. And I think he's won an interim bout. I think he fought
Matisse.
Yeah, did he beat? Okay, so
knocked him out early.
Yeah, and Matisse, he's out there, he's sticking his chin out there. But let's not forget, 2 years ago, he was going 10 hard rounds with the Punisher, Paul Williams. He's a dangerous guy. I believe he had Sebastian Lujan down in their shootout that took place in Argentina last year. A dangerous guy, so he's staying busy. If he can beat Martinez, who is a good boxer, a good outside 1-2 southpaw boxer who can he can pop a little bit with his left hand when he sets it up from the outside. If Bunima can beat Martinez and win this interim title, that is hands down comeback of the year, and what a success story.
Doug, what a shame for Andre Ward. I really thought he was starting to hit his stride as a professional. He had some momentum, and you're wondering why are there no plans being announced for Andre Ward? Well, it turns out he has a bad wheel, and it's unfortunate because the momentum now comes to a complete halt.
Yeah, if I understand right, Steve, he's got to have surgery on that knee, and he's going to be out.
He did.
Okay, he's going to be out for the rest of the year?
I would say so.
You talked to his promoter, Dan Guzman. When did he expect him to be back in 2009? He
said that there is a chance late 08. But let's be very honest. He just went through arthroscopic knee surgery. Also, the television dates are already being slotted. And when you have a fighter on the mend who has has to go through rehabilitation. You know what? Don't even risk it. Just start anew in 09. The shame is just when you thought that he's going to hit that point where, you know what? This guy might do something.
Starting to look really good.
It just comes to a halt.
Yeah, he's starting to find his professional, his ring identity, his professional groove. And based on his last 2 performances of this year, I was looking forward to, you know, maybe I'm looking like into late 2009 or even the first half of 2010. But I was thinking a huge All-American 168-pound showdown between Andre Ward, the American gold medalist from 2004, and the Ghost, Kelly Pavlik.
Yeah, that was also another one.
What a huge fight that would be.
But I think Dan Goossen himself realizes, you know what, that may be too big of a jump. I think the fight they're going to go after, and it does have some appeal, I think is a fight between Andre Ward and Peter Manfredo. Peter Manfredo is staying active. He's putting together some victories, and there is a name value being with the contender.
It's a good TV fight, and a veteran where, you know, maybe gives him some quality rounds where he can, you know, assess where he is. I mean, do you think Peter Manfredo is a safe first comeback opponent off of the layoff and the surgery, or maybe he should fight like a mid-level guy and then fight Manfredo on TV?
If you want to get televised, there has to be a certain standard in terms of the name brand recognition of opponent and also the level of opponent. You can't fight Kenny Costigan at this stage and expect to get televised. Doug, speaking of Andre Ward, 2004 Olympic gold medalist. Doug, if I never watch Olympic boxing again, it'll be too soon. The Olympics ended this past weekend, and thank God, what AIBA has done to amateur boxing has turned it into a form of fencing, tag, and keep away, and it's unwatchable.
They've turned it into a game of grab ass.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if that's your cup of tea and you enjoy it, that's all good, to each his own. I don't want to watch that. When I watch Olympic boxing, Steve, I want to see, you know, Howard Davis Jr. I want to see the Spinks brothers. I want to see Sugar Ray Leonard.
Meldrick Taylor.
I want to see Meldrick Taylor. I want to see Mark Breland. I want to see Sweetboy. Oscar De La Hoya. Exactly. I want to see Roy Jones Jr. I want to see Kennedy McKinney. I want to see young, talented fighters throwing clean, accurate punches with some leverage behind them. I don't want to see skittish guys jumping around, doing this horrible Prince Nassim Hamed on speed imitation and clutching and grabbing and racking up like just enough to have like a 4 or 5 point lead in 2 rounds and then playing keep away for the next 2 rounds. That's garbage.
Here's the thing. I just want to speak about the U.S. team. I do see some talent, but I thought it was a little bit disrespectful and over the top the way everything became the fault of Dan Campbell.
Right. They blame the coach.
When you have kids who are openly disdainful and it's downright insubordination, and you're not listening to what he says, and you lose the fight, and you admit, I wasn't listening to Dan Campbell, guess what, guys?
That's his fault,
That's not Dan Campbell's fault if you're admitting, I'm not listening to the guy, my ears to my father or my trainer. Let me just say one thing. I have seen a lot of bad trainers be camouflaged by great talent, but never the other way around. Doug, let's be honest. If Pernell Whitaker, Howard Davis, or Ray Leonard had Dan Campbell, and even if they went to
if they had you as their head coach, they still would have come away with gold medals. There's no doubt about that.
At the end of the day, it's an 8-minute window of time where it's one-on-one, and it's really on you. De La Hoya made Robert Alcazar look good.
Yes, he did.
Okay? But I'm just saying, I don't care if you had Pat Nappy or Kenny Adams or Pat Burns. And first of all, if those 3 men were involved, we may have had some issues. Let me tell you, they'd
have been choking out some of these little ingrates. There's no doubt about that.
It would have been team turmoil.
Yeah.
But I'm just sick of these guys who put up these stinking performances. And yes, some of them did get the short end of the stick. But I think they got to learn a lesson here, Doug. When you point the finger, 3 of them come right back at you. You know what, guys? Maybe you're not that good. Doug, Demetrius Andrade is supposed to be the best prospect. You know what, Doug? I think he's a slightly heavier-handed version of Sakyu Powell.
Wow.
I don't see a great talent. I don't see a sure thing. I really don't.
I don't know. You know what? I didn't see it in these Olympics, but I watched him, I think, last year win the World Championships, and there was an event from Thailand, some kind of World Cup that was actually broadcast on some network. Somebody called me up and told me to watch it earlier this year, and he looked darn good in there. He looked to have a little bit more natural ability than Sakyu Powell, a little more fluidity.
Well, more pop.
More pop, yeah. You know what? The proof will be in the pudding. Let's see what all of these guys do once the headgear comes off, once the tank tops come off, and they're fitted with smaller gloves. Let's see what happens when they have to fight past 4 rounds.
So there you have it. That's it for this week's edition of TNR on behalf of Doug Fisher and the rest of Max Boxing. Till the next round, goodbye, everybody.